Hello, I'm Dr. Talorico. I'm going to talk today about diabetes and pre-diabetes and also a condition called insulin resistance. Recently I saw a billboard that said that 86 million Americans have pre-diabetes, and that was just a shocking number. I thought things were pretty bad, and then looking at that, things are far worse than what I anticipated. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about what that is and why that is, and just explain a little bit of the chemistry behind diabetes and what's going on. Human beings have 4 hormones to raise blood sugar. Okay, so we have 4 hormones to raise blood sugar and only 1 to store it. And this one's called insulin. This one we have human growth hormone, cortisol, glucagon, and norepinephrine. So from an evolutionary standpoint, the body cares a lot more about elevating blood sugar than it does about storing it, because we didn't evolve around a constant supply of food and carbohydrate. So, we had to really work hard to get food. It was part of the everyday process. Now all you have to do is go to the refrigerator. So we have 4 hormones that elevate blood sugar and only 1 that stores it. Okay? So this one is where a lot of our problems are coming from. The body's response to foods is to store first in the liver and muscle. That is glucose, that's sugar. It stores first in the liver and muscle. And there's a finite amount of storage that can go there. And then the other place is body fat. So insulin is, for all intents and purposes, a fat storage hormone. And that hormone gave us a survival benefit. So if you could store fat, you could survive times of famine or a crisis where there wasn't ample supplies of food. So this is our longevity. This is how we survive. Okay? The next thing we need to know is, I'm going to put a little graph here. And this is blood sugar graph. And it's going to be composed of what we like to see as a normal range. And so over time, if our blood sugar is going like this, and then starting to creep up, this is where detection would happen. And you might say, oh, this person is becoming diabetic. But here's the other thing that you need to know. All the while, your body is managing that sugar with insulin. So as long as those 2 things are going okay, there's no issue. But here's what happens. Let's say this range is, 80 to 120. If this insulin is flat, there's a stable relationship here, everything is staying good. But what happens is this: we develop what's called insulin resistance. And we started developing it here. Detection didn't happen until here. This could be years. So essentially, you could be in a pre-diabetic state or even a diabetic state, for all intents and purposes, years before you're ever diagnosed or classified as having diabetes. So what's happening here is this: our body's becoming more resistant to the effects of insulin. And this is a problem of gigantic proportion. This is where all of these problems are actually coming from, is actually from insulin resistance more than anything else. So, and it has a lot to do with what we're eating. So if we put another little graph here, and we look at the foods that we're consuming, and again, blood sugar. So carbohydrate's going to do like this. So we'll call this carbs. Proteins are going to do like this. And then fats are going to do like this. So the net impact on our blood sugar from carbohydrate is very dramatic. The net impact on our blood sugar from protein is less, but it's significant. The net impact on our blood sugar from fats is very minimal. And yet, when we go into the recommendations as far as what diabetics are supposed to eat, the American Diabetes Association is still saying 45% carbs. And you may ask yourself, okay, if we're recommending 45% of our calories come from carbs, how are we ever going to break out of this cycle? And the answer is you can't. You won't. You can't break free because you're constantly eating something that your body doesn't manage. Now imagine if we looked at it this way. Let's suppose you're allergic to something. Let's say, like my son Sam is allergic to shrimp. We found this out on a family vacation. You know, we were eating shrimp, and he said, you know, I feel funny. My throat feels like it's kind of funny on, and we were like, oh gosh, we're going to get him something right away. So we got him some Benadryl to calm everything down. So imagine you're allergic to shrimp, and you're on a regimen of, controlling that because you're going to eat the shrimp every day. It sounds ludicrous. So I have to take Benadryl at 10, 2, and 6 to regulate my shrimp allergy. As stupid as this sounds, it's almost exactly what's going on with people who are diabetic or pre-diabetic. If you think of pre-diabetes as an allergy to glucose, then how much would you eat? How much glucose would you eat through your foods? How much starch would you eat? How much sugar would you eat if you were allergic to it? If your answer is 0, then you're coming into the realm of understanding of what the problem is. And yet, we're still saying 45% carbs. So we're eating 45% of our calories from something that our body cannot process. And that dogmatic way of thinking, that way of programming people, is killing people. It is a dramatic opposition to what logic would suggest that we do. That dogma is putting people, making them sicker and sicker and sicker, because there's some thinking, oh, you have to eat whole grains. You don't have to eat whole grains. There is a 0 carbohydrate requirement in the body. Your body is brilliant at making carbohydrate and sugar from other food sources. So if you ate only protein and fat, your body would regulate energy. It would create glucose through a process called gluconeogenesis, and it would have stable energy for your brain and your body through things like ketones and also the sugar that we've made from body fat and also from proteins. So there's really no reason in a physical sense that you have to eat all of those carbohydrates. It's a terrible, terrible idea. So, not to mention some of the things that we're eating are even worse. So, one of the things that's really popular in our food supply is something called high fructose corn syrup. High fructose corn syrup is really cheap. It's easy to get a hold of. It's made from corn or whatever it is, and it's very cheap, and it's used to sweeten, and it has a very good taste. And people will say, well, it's not that sweet. It's not as sweet as sugar in terms of its glycemic index. And that's true, but the way your body processes it is totally different. So this fructose that's in this can't get into the muscle. It can only go to the liver and then eventually to body fat storage. So you see elevation in things like triglycerides because you can't get enough of that sugar into a muscle. It has to be kind of converted into a fat, long-chain fatty acid called palmitic acid, and then it's stored as body fat. So we're eating a lot of that. The other thing that's going on is type 2 diabetics, the kind that still make insulin, they're being given insulin to manage their condition. And to me, that is the equivalent of giving an alcoholic alcohol to manage their condition. The last thing they need is insulin. They have too much insulin. What they lack is insulin sensitivity. So all the work that needs to be done with them has to be done on diet and improving their insulin sensitivity. The simplest thing that you can do to improve your insulin sensitivity and to lower your blood sugar is move around. Exercise is the single best diabetes drug ever. Better than everything. So once you start mobilizing these, this glucose and using it as energy, which is what it is, then the problems start to go away very, very quickly. The other thing that we have to do is we have to look at how is a person sleeping. Do they sleep enough? Are they getting quality sleep? Because sleep alone can lower your insulin, effectiveness. It can make you more resistant. So if you're not sleeping enough, your insulin resistance goes up. A fast. So essentially, eating less meals, smaller meals, less often. It kind of flies in the convention of you have to have 3 meals and 3 snacks every day. Okay, how does that make any sense? Is that how we, evolved as a species? I would dare say that is not how we evolved. We evolved to handle infrequent meals based on the 4 hormones that we have to mobilize blood sugar. And so if we sit down and eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and we're eating 45% carbohydrate, and then our blood sugar is going out of control, yeah, I can see why you need insulin. You're doing the wrong things. You can't metabolize the carbohydrate, and so therefore you need a big gun to push this sugar out of the blood where it's doing a lot of damage. It's causing heart disease. It's causing all of these other problems, circulatory issues. You're using a bigger gun. But the insulin level, only thing that really accomplishes is it's a short-term goal. It's just pumping that out of there. And high insulin levels make people tired, fat, and basically just hungry all the time. So it's almost a self-fulfilling prophecy. If I can get my board to cooperate, there we go. You got glucose. Okay, and you pump that away with insulin into body fat, and then we're going to work back this way. So as we're doing this, we're increasing the hunger. Because our muscles that are not being exercised and our liver that's full of energy, nothing more can go there. So it has to go to body fat. So we're going to make us more obese over time. That obesity increases insulin resistance. So then we have more and more glucose in the blood. So this is a vicious cycle, and it's one you need to get off of. It's deadly, and it's a major part of what's going on. And the problem is the American Diabetes Association, which is the go-to organization, is the ones who created the guideline that says that 45% of the meal of your energy needs to come from carbohydrate. I just, for the life of me, don't understand the logic. When we know that a person has an error in carbohydrate metabolism and they can't effectively use carbohydrate, why would we continue to feed it to them? I don't get it. So we need to break away from that. That dogmatic way of handling this condition is causing a dramatic rise in the new diabetics, and it's causing more and more people to be sick, and just basically in a bad way. The big thing here when we talked about the nutrients was they recommend a low-fat diet and a medium carbohydrate diet, because they still are on this idea that fat is bad for you. More people have died under this banner than almost any other banner in modern times. Fat is not bad for you. Fat is almost completely insulin neutral. Eating fat will not elevate your blood sugar. Eating protein will cause a moderate raise in blood sugar, and eating carbohydrate will cause a dramatic raise in blood sugar. It's not to say you don't eat any carbohydrate, but your carbohydrates should be very limited to things that are nutrient containing, like if you want to eat berries or fruit or something like that. All of those things that come in nature also have enzymes and nutrients and things that help your body actually process the carbohydrate. So blueberries and these dark fruits, they have these anthocyanins which increase insulin sensitivity, which is amazing. It's like, wow, we're almost meant to eat that. But when you eat a bunch of starch and grain, the nutrients aren't there. And in fact, a lot of these things like, bread, people think, well, bread is good, it's healthy, it has this and that. But your body processes bread the same way it processes anything else. A starch is just a chain of glucose molecules. Your body breaks it down and very effectively raises your blood sugar. So then you need this insulin response. And then if your body's making insulin and it's not enough because you have resistance, your blood sugar goes up and you get sick. You start to develop the symptoms. So some of the common symptoms are discoloration of the skin. Maybe the knuckles or the elbows or by the ankles. So that's a sign that something is not going right. People develop skin tags on their neck. So if you have skin tags here, that could be a sign that your blood sugar is getting too high. You're developing insulin resistance. You could develop a lot of extra weight. You could become more obese. By even consuming the same calories, your body can't get it into the muscle. It can't get it into the liver. So it has to put it somewhere. So it puts it in the body fat. Okay, you could have a lot of fatigue, you could have a lot of thirst, and you could just generally not feel good. And that's all signs that you're not processing carbohydrate wisely. Instead of saying, okay, well, now I need to take medication, you need to have a come to Jesus moment with yourself, because you know what you're consuming. It's not a mystery what you're doing. You need to have accountability for the things that you're consuming. And I work with people. I've been doing natural health for 20 years. So I work with people in this situation. I have a program that's a metabolic program, and it's an anti-inflammatory program. And the main thing is to get their metabolism right. There's other hormones in the mix that we haven't even talked about, such as leptin and ghrelin and adenopectin and all these other ones that are background hormones doing things. And they all have an interplay here, because how your body partitions energy is really, really important. So if you're an inactive person, you need to start getting more active. I'm not saying run marathons. I'm saying walk. If you don't sleep well, you have to sleep. You have to intermittently fast. So one of the benefits of sleep is when you go to sleep, you're not eating. And so for 6 or 8 hours, your body has some time to recover, to regain sensitivity. If you're constantly putting things in your mouth, you're constantly eating too many meals, too many carbohydrates, you are setting yourself up for this condition, and you're not going to break out of it. And you're going to wind up on medication, potentially insulin as well, and probably cardiac medication, because 65% of diabetics go on to develop heart disease and die from it. So this is a serious, serious matter, and it really needs another way of thinking. The approach that we have now is wrong, okay? And to say, well, this is how we've always done it and that's how we're going to continue to do it, is probably the single biggest issue that we have now at all. We can't continue to do it. If we continue to do what we've always done, we'll continue to get what we've always gotten. And that's exactly where we are now. So I hope this helps. If there's any questions or comments, leave them below. Thank you.